Yes, welcome into Foxboro Rush. George Blechy here with Keegan Stifle of Nesson.com. Co-hosting with me today. Keegan, I love having you on the program. How are we doing tonight, my friend?
Doing great. The show must go on. The Celtics are trying to kind of push us around a little bit, but we're going to figure it out.
Hey, Travis holding it down with that coverage. Of course, you can catch Hold My Banner, the latest episode, wherever you get your podcasts, along with Boston has entered the chat. And here, of course, Foxboro Rush. This drops 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. When you're done watching or listening to this awesome episode with Keegan and I, please go to YouTube, Nesson's YouTube, subscribe. That's where you can watch all our podcasts, or go to Spotify, Apple, or Amazon. Like, subscribe, rate, and review as well. We're everywhere now. Audio, visual, wherever you want it, full coverage. We have podcasts dropping daily, and like this one, Foxboro Rush, everything you want Patriots, dropping 3 days a week. All right, Keegan, so I want to start with, you were the man down at Patriots minicamp, training camp, OTAs, all throughout the offseason, you and Sean McGuire covering the team. What has jumped out to you, and we've had you on past episodes about what stuck out to you from day of, but now when you look at the full body of work, from a rookie minicamp to OTAs wrapping up before they get into mandatory minicamp, what has jumped out to you the most about this Patriots team?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to talk about the quarterbacks, right? You've got a kid who you know is going to be the future of the franchise that everybody's focusing on, but for me, really, there are a lot of moving parts with this team. Gerard Mayo's first season, it's a brand new coaching staff, essentially. Very few holdovers, really only on the defensive side of the ball. And then even on the defense, there are questions with who's going to step up in the absence of some players who have left or retired. Special teams, there are questions. So the big thing that's come out of OTAs for me is there are a lot of questions that need to be answered entering training camp and during training camp.
A special teams reference. We're not even 2 minutes into the show. That's why I love you, Keeks. Brendan Schooler, full breakdown, coming down. What about the wideouts? Because we know there's a lot of them. Are any of them good? Yeah, there's a few. We'll see how the rookies are. But when you look at this wide receiver group, KJ Osborne, Kendrick Bourne, Jalen Polk, Demario Pop Douglas, Javon Baker, Juju Smith-Schuster's there. Tyquan Thornton has made some noise. Has anyone jumped out to you of someone that can actually be a wide receiver one for Drake May or Jacoby Brissett?
I really, it's just so early at this point to make a decision on that. I think from what we've seen, the Patriots are really going to expect a lot out of Jalen Polk and Javon Baker. These two guys, they drafted them for a reason. Polk specifically, second-round guy. We talked about him last time I was on, where at some point he's going to be expected to take a step forward, whether it's going to be during his rookie season or if they want to kind of slow these guys in. That's a question that's going to be answered, obviously, during the season. But as we move forward here, minicamp, this is a mandatory thing. So there are some guys who haven't been around who are going to come. Not so much the receivers. All the receivers have been there except for Kendrick Bourne, who's coming back from an injury. But defensive backs. And this is where you get into the one-on-one stuff. Mano-a-mano, especially with those two position groups, too. These are guys that they like to battle with each other. They like to talk. And I think as we get the Jonathan Joneses of the world are going to be coming back into the fold, and seeing how the young guys stack up against a legit cornerback who's done it. He's been here a long time. I think that's going to be such a huge thing for these two guys specifically. And then even some of the younger guys who might not really be on the roster fringe to this, really looking for a job maybe somewhere else. It's going to be a big day for the receivers, the cornerbacks, to see how they stack up against one another.
Yeah, I think it's so important. You bring up matching up with cornerbacks. I mean, getting a look at Christian Gonzalez, all the attention we give the wide receivers as well. But Christian Gonzalez is a guy that stepped in, cornerback one, first-round draft pick, of course, the last of Bill Belichick's era. Played 4 games, got injured against the Cowboys, and that was it for the season. But the flash we saw the first 4 weeks from him has the makeup to be an elite cornerback one for any team in the NFL. His matchups with these veteran receivers, like a Kendrick Bourne coming off a torn ACL, like a KJ Osborne coming into this team, his first time signing with them since he signed from the Vikings, and of course Javon Baker and Jalen Polk, how do they match up with him is so vital. When you look at this wide receiver group, do you think as is, if they go in, now given who you have making the team, who you have getting cut, but the wide receiver group that's at Patriots camp, if they take these group of guys, dwindle it down to 5 or 6 individuals, do you have confidence in that group going into an actual NFL season for 17 games that they could hold their own and be an upgrade from last year, which I think everyone can say will, because last year was just bare minimum terrible?
Right. I think without a doubt it's an upgrade. It's kind of the semantic part of how much of an upgrade. Is it an upgrade enough to make a difference? They'll be better, but how much better? I think with the 2 young guys specifically, and with KJ Osborne, those are 3 guys who are going to be a part of this group that weren't last year. And then you're filling in. Demario Douglas is going to make this team. He has such a big role in the slot. He was really their only reliable offensive player last year because Ramondre Stevenson got hurt and missed half the season. So he'll be back. Kendrick Bourne, depending on injury, is he a pup guy? Is he going to be ready? By all accounts, he should be, right? But you never know. The knees are really tricky, especially with the wide receivers. You've seen it with Juju Smith-Schuster. But with the new guys that are come in and kind of pushing, I think what's going to happen is Jalen Polk, if he can take a step, and KJ Osborne, you'll remember. I forgot he was even on the team last time I was on because It wasn't really a big splash move, but he's a good football player, right? He's a reliable receiver. He's been there. He's done it. He's been around great players throughout his career. He talked about that at OTAs. He got to learn from Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson and even a Jordan Addison, who was a rookie last year. He got to take a few things from these guys. So I think it's going to push everything where it needs to be competitive. It's not going to push them over the top. You don't have a number one guy yet, but I think they can be a competitive group. I think they can help a young quarterback for whenever Drake Maye eventually does step in. I expect more than some people, but I'm not expecting the world. This is let's take baby steps. Let's make sure we got a couple guys who can play some football, and then we'll mold it from there.
Yeah, like you said, it's an upgrade, but let's talk semantics. It's like you went from a 2015 Honda Civic to a 2022 Toyota Corolla. And hand up, I was a proud owner of a Toyota Corolla for over 10 years, so I'm not crapping on anyone that drives those wonderful machines.
Car.
Reliable as hell. You shouldn't need one. A Honda Civic, it's 2015. You shouldn't need one after 9 years. But just what gets me is you look at this group. KJ Osborne, 6 foot, 200 pounds. Bourne, 6'1", 205. Polk, 6'1", 205. Pop Douglas, 5'8". He's a slot guy, 192. Baker, 6'1", 208. Juju, 6'1", 215, and a heavy 215. Tyquan, 6'2", 185. Great straight line speed, but not much of a guy that can do anything underneath. But whatever, everyone complements each other. This wide receiver group needs to go out. The front office needs to go out and see if they can find a playmaker, whether it's via trade, like a T. Higgins with Cincinnati, who hasn't signed that franchise tag yet and wants to hold out to get paid, or if they go another avenue and maybe there's a free agent out there as well. But when you look at this wide receiver group and when you look at this rookie class as a whole, keep in mind the Caden Wallaces, right? The Layden Robinsons as well. Is there anyone you see being an immediate impact rookie, or is, again, it's going to be Polk and it's going to be Baker? But that's also because of how bad this wide receiver group was a year ago.
Yeah, from what we've seen in terms of the offensive line, one of those two guys are going to play, Caden Wallace or Layden Robinson. Robinson is an interesting case because he's a guard, and that's really where they might have a spot open up. From what we've seen so far, and it's really early, it's not really about who the best five are. It's about who meshes together, what the best unit is. Mm-hmm. But Nick Leverett has been the guy that's kind of hopped in opposite City So and really been one of their better guards. He's repped with the ones. But if Layden Robinson can push him, he might play. Caden Wallace is tough because do you want to move him to the left side? Is he going to be better on the right side where, Mike Onwenu's their best offensive lineman, and he's got that locked down. So I think those two, they're NFL players, and they're good enough to start. It's just if there's going to be a spot for them. It's such a tough thing to really complain about because you've got good NFL players, and you've got some okay depth there. It's just, did you draft two rookies to be backups?
Especially,
but they're good. Go ahead.
No, especially when you have this gaping hole at left tackle. And like you said, you draft two rookies to be backups. And you mentioned it. Caden Wallace, good right tackle, but Mike Onwenu is your best offensive lineman. He was the best free agent tackle this offseason, and he re-signed him, got him paid, good for you. But you drafted a right tackle when you need a left tackle, and you signed a right tackle and Chuck Okorafor when you needed a left tackle as well. Like, that's what I come back to with this offensive line. And that's why I bring up Robinson and Wallace talking about immediate impact guys. And you drop a name like Nick Leverett in my lap, where it's like, okay, great. So they have another guard, but they still don't have a left tackle.
Right. Yeah. And with what they did, I think there was a little bit of hubris of like, we can figure it out.
Yeah.
We can make one of these guys and turn him into a left tackle. I don't know if they can, and I would not be surprised whatsoever. You see the early training camp signings all the time, especially with veteran players. A guy like Donovan Smith's still out there. And I am not a fan. I watched him block for Brady for a couple of years, and it was ugly at points. He was Brady's left tackle, but he kept the 43, 44-year-old guy alive. So I trust him to keep the young kid alive. Drake Maye's an athlete. He can move around. Jacoby Brissett, you want to protect him, but it's really about protecting Drake Maye for when he's ready. I wonder if they'll go out, if they are willing to admit to the mistake of we didn't go get a left tackle, it's not too late. There's a guy who can be a stopgap for a year, like Donovan Smith or maybe somebody else. I wouldn't be surprised at all. David Bakhtiari, that knee is held together by Scotch tape.
I don't trust it. Yeah, I don't trust Bakhtiari's knee. I was there when he got paid. I was covering the Packers when he got paid middle of the season. I was there when he tore his ACL. And this is a guy which we saw it for every offseason since then. This would be the third offseason since he's gotten paid. It's the excitement of Bakhtiari's back. He's starting the left tackle. Aaron Rodgers' best friend. It's great. And then randomly he'll miss a game because his knee just can't hold up for given like 6 games into his season, let alone a 17-game schedule. But I understand what you're saying by floating that name out there, because a Bakhtiari can give you good 4 weeks while you're waiting for someone to step up and be a left tackle. It corrects a mistake you made in the offseason. And at least to start the season, you have something there.
Yeah, beggars can't be choosers. And
that's what they're
at a certain point, they're probably going to be there. So at that point, you just need a guy that can play football. For me, if it's for 4 weeks, it's for 4 weeks.
I'll tell you, if they get David Bakhtiari, he'll be a great soundbite. So everyone in New England will love him for that reason. Hey, Matt Judon obviously did a hold-in last offseason. Got money pushed up from the last year of his contract to the third year. Got paid, showed up, was great, and then tore his biceps in that loss against the Cowboys, done for the season. Are you looking at another hold-in going down? Because last year of his deal, going to be 32, only do $6.5 million, but this is a guy that's done 12.5, 15.5 sacks the 2 years prior before he went down with that injury against the Cowboys.
I'd be shocked if he participates really at all during mandatory minicamp. He said he'll be there, right? And who am I to call him a liar? I assume he will, and he did it last year where he showed up. He did the minimum stuff, he stretched and then kind of stood off to the side, whatever it was. I would assume he'll just do the same thing this year. The problem with the Patriots is there's no money to advance. This is the last year of his deal. He has $7 million left on that contract. That's what he's scheduled to get paid. So if you want to pay him more, if you want him to kind of jump in and help you during the summer, you're going to have to either extend him or just give him more money, which never happens. You got to meet in the middle. Maybe it's an extra year. They front load some of the money again. It's not a popular thing because Matthew Judon's been such a great Patriot. He's done such a good job of representing the team in the darkest times we've seen in the last 2 decades. It sounds dramatic when you say it like that, but some dark times in New England. And he's been, smile on the face, represents the team. He's been their best player. But would it be worth, if this isn't going to be a good football team, are you going to just have a great defensive player out there and then let him go next offseason for nothing? Or are you going to be willing to sit down and have the hard conversation of, let's go out and get something for this guy? Bill Belichick did that, and he succeeded. The Brady thing, obviously, at the end was the argument against it. But for so many years, Vince Wilfork had a couple good years left in him, but he eventually faded off, and the Patriots weren't stuck paying him money. Richard Seymour, Logan Mankins. You see it specifically with guys in the trenches. It's not smart business to just give a guy some money so he'll play out the year. And if he's not willing, you see it with Hassan Reddick, who the Jets traded for. They traded for him. They didn't get a contract done, and he's not showing up. He told the Eagles he's not playing for the money that his current contract is at, and he's telling the Jets the same thing. So you're really going to have to find a team who's willing to give Matthew Judon a little bit of money and get him out there, or you're going to have to be the team that bites the bullet. He's not going to actually play real football for $7 million this year. It's just not smart business on his end either.
And even I was looking at what if you give him, guaranteed money, give him $12 million a year. Everyone that meets his threshold, and that's like the bare minimum of talking of giving someone that plays up to his caliber. The oldest you would get is a Daniil Hunter, 30 years old, signed a 2-year, $48 million guaranteed contract with the Houston Texans. It's $24 million a year, but again, 30 years old. DN's getting paid the max spot where you want them, 26, 27, to give them a deal like that. I do love the idea. If you sit down with Matt Judon, if you give him an extension but go, we're going to sign and trade you, just the team that's on the other end of it, they want more in it of where it goes, we have more trust, he'll be here, it's not a rental. But at the same time, what team, whether it's a Patriots or it's a team they're trading him to, is going to want to be paying a 32, 33-year-old Matt Judon? But if you trade him because this team's going to be bad no matter what, this is a 7-win team at best, what good does Matt Judon do? Like you said, if he walks after this point, unless they have a meeting in the middle where We'll play. You pay under $6.5 million. We'll give you an extension, but it's gonna have to be a heavy hometown discount. And for Judon, it's gonna have to be a realistic mug of humility, where he goes, "All right, I'm not gonna get that $20 million a year that I've dreamed of." But keep in mind, he made over $40 million by signing his contract with the Patriots, so he did get paid at some point. But that is a great point you bring up of, do they meet with them, trade them, or do they let them leave for nothing? Because this is a team that's just stuck. This is a 3-year rebuild. What do you do with a great piece right now? And also there's a business aspect of it too that I think about, Keegan, of Matt Judon's popular with the red sleeves, popular in the media. Yep. His jersey sells. One of the rare guys on this team that has a jersey that sells that isn't a quarterback. So what do you do there? And you know Robert Kraft, Jonathan Kraft, and Robin Glazer care about that last part a lot.
You love bringing up Robin Glazer. It's one of my favorite things about you is that she's basically running the team at this point.
That's it, yeah. I have to. I can't say Kraft without Glazer following it because she is. She is. What do you want? Jonathan Kraft and her, they are the head honchos, the future head honchos of this franchise.
I don't know who's in whose pocket, but one of those two is in each. They're running things together, so I appreciate that you keep bringing it up. And I will say, I can see the comments now of people saying, "You have, $50 million. Just give him Judon money." Okay, if you want to give him just money to play out the year, I can kind of understand that, but it's committing your money. You're going to have less to spend on the free agent class next year. So you have to be smart. You have to look in the future, not just this is how much money we have now. I don't think just because somebody has $500 in the bank account, they're going to go spend it because they know they're getting paid. It's just not how it works.
I think if you go out and you trade for T. Higgins, pay him. You go out, get a left tackle, pay them. You see what you have left, and it works with Judon, then I'm fine paying him. But again, yes, it's all about next year, year after, who you have to pay. The one thing the Patriots have on their side is they have a quarterback under a rookie scale contract. And 2 of their top, let's say, 4 receivers, again, under rookie scale contracts for the next 4 years. All right, moving past the Patriots, when you're looking across the whole landscape of the NFL, Keegan, what on your mind is the biggest storyline for a mandatory minicamp of a team elsewhere of any of the 31 other teams across the NFL?
I don't want to move too far outside of the AFC East because that's really kind of where our bread is buttered. The Bills have a wide receiver problem. Yeah. And we're going to talk more about Stefon Diggs later, but Curtis Samuel is their top wideout. Is that going to get it done? I would much rather have the Patriots group than their group, and I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but it's Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, and a whole lot of nothing.
Keon Coleman, who never got open even when he was in college, never got separation.
Right. We're talking rookie wide receivers, right? It's the same thing with the Patriots. They're in the same boat, and people aren't talking about it as much because they have Josh Allen, and he's a top 3 quarterback probably in the NFL, and he can fix a lot of problems. And I agree 1,000% with the idea of Josh Allen can upgrade a wide receiver room. He can make them look a lot better than they actually are. But it was a lot easier for him to do that when Stefon Diggs was kind of at the top, and everybody else was the spots around him. So that's the big one. Just who's going to emerge over there? Is Keon Coleman a real piece? Is Khalil Shakir a real piece? Is Curtis Samuel going to be able to stay on the field? It's not a great wide receiver core, and their secondary isn't all that great either. So that's a big part of your team that is a huge question mark for a franchise whose window is closing.
I like that point that you make. The only one I could confidently say is a real piece is Khalil Shakir to me, but that's a wide receiver 3 at best. That's a little gadget slot receiver like a DeMario Douglas is for the Patriots. You don't want him being the guy. That's the only one that's a real piece to me. The one I want to start with, you're talking receivers. I'm sticking in the AFC, and I brought it up, but it's the Bengals and their wide receiver holdouts. Yeah. Jamar Chase, they've come out. Zach Taylor, the head coach, has come out and said Jamar Chase and us have had good dialogue. He keeps it at that. They waited for Justin Jefferson to sign. That set the table. We're talking $88 million guaranteed at signing, $110 million guaranteed over the course of a contract. So now Jamar Chase's team is looking at the Bengals front office and go, I'm a top 3 receiver. I want to get Justin Jefferson money. But to me, it's more important, and I think in the Patriots in this perspective, if they pay Jamar Chase, they're not going to pay T. Higgins. They already took care of Joe Burrow and paid him. So then what happens with T. Higgins? Does he end up signing that franchise tender, which will pay him $21 million, which is great guaranteed money to play under for 1 year. Better money, of course, he'll make right now and maybe on the open market, but we know what T. Higgins wants. He wants that long-term guaranteed money. So do the Patriots pick up the phone, and in a reason they wouldn't pay Matt Judon, but they go, we have this rookie quarterback. let's get and I went over the size of the receivers earlier in this podcast. Let's get a 6'4", 220-pound guy that has stepped up to be the receiver when Chase is out. Pay him for 4 years while Drake Maye is a rookie. Pay him for the next 4 years. Give him Nico Collins money. Here's $55 million guaranteed. That's how much we love you. For the next 4 years, this is what you'll be making. Do the Patriots pick up the phone and do that, or do we see other teams seeking an elite wide receiver one or wide receiver help? Like the Bills, but they're cash strapped. The Pats are in a good spot where they're like Buffalo in a soft rebuild, but they have the cap room. Go out and get T. Higgins. To me, that's the thing they should do, but something I'm monitoring, because also there are teams out there that could go out and swoop them, ones that have lost receivers or ones that are trying to build up their receiving room.
Yeah, it'd be wise to go out, at least sniff around, right? There's no sense in not making your intentions known, like, hey, we want this guy. And I would assume that conversations have been had. It's one of those things where the Bengals have all the power right now. They placed a franchise tag on him. At a certain point, he's going to have to sign it if he wants to actually get paid, and he'll probably play on it. But like you said, there are a ton of teams, I assume, that are calling Cincinnati all the time, and that's kind of the big focus of what minicamp is leading into training camp. You're going to see a lot of, once training camp comes, now it's real. When players aren't participating, now it's, okay, we got to figure something out with this guy if he's not going to be playing. So, like you said, it's the same thing with Judon, same thing with T. Higgins. These guys who aren't going to participate and are going to hold out until they get their, that real money.
What else? What else around the league? What's one other storyline in mandatory minicamp you're watching for that really caught your eye?
We're going to stick to the Patriots. This is Foxboro Rush, right? We got to stick kind of Patriots adjacent. I'm thinking about who's poachable, who's going to get cut during training camp. They're not going to get cut in the middle of June, but at the end of July, somebody steps up for a team, and there's a veteran out there maybe who's to step into the limelight of, kind of having a real role in their team. I've got a couple names for you. They're not sexy, but it's offense, right? So a couple running backs. Izzy Apaganda with New York. He's not a great football player, right? But go look at the Patriots roster and the running backs they have. They've got 2. And then they got a ton of guys who are fighting to make the roster. So he's a guy who maybe he's a better third option. And then Jeff Wilson with the Dolphins. Are the Dolphins going to have to cut him loose? And if they do, you add some real speed into that running back room, something that they don't have. Ramondre Stevenson is great, but he's not a speedy guy. Antonio Gibson is more of a wide range at this point in his career. Those are a couple interesting names. And then I got a couple of tight ends. Mo Alley Cox, who's one of my favorite players in the entire NFL. He is a tremendous tight end, too. He kind of had to be the number one in Indy for a few years, but I think really good too. He can step in and kind of replace Austin Hooper, who hasn't done much of anything to this point. He's like not even participating. It looks like he's just kind of there. And then Keith with the Buccaneers, tight end 3. He'll kind of slot in if Jaheim Bell's not ready to step up and be a blocking tight end, and those jumbo sets that Alex Van Pelt loves to run. Keith's the guy. So not sexy, like I said. These aren't names that are going to get anybody too excited, but they can help the offense, and you'll take what you can get, right? Beggars can't be choosers, like we said.
I thought my Honda Civic Toyota Corolla talk would be like the least sexy part of this podcast. And then you started talking running back 3s.
That's right.
Tight end 2s. I love you, Keeks, but you're a football guy. It's what you know.
That's real ball.
I do like the Mo Alley Cox call because I do agree. You're going to need production at the tight end position. You know what you get with Hunter Henry, and he's okay. He's like a C-plus guy. Like, he's good. He's good. It's better to have somebody there. Exactly. Reliable, but not a great run blocker. Doesn't really work to get open, but finds his way open. More of, when you get into the red area, 25 yards and in, when you're really knocking on the red zone in the end zone, he could go up and get a ball for Jacoby Brissett or Drake May now at this point. But Mo Alley Cox adds depth to that room, adds competition. I think most important because as someone that loves the draft pick of Jaheim Bell, because that's a guy that can be used as a fullback in a jumbo package, can be used like a Kyle Juszczyk of what you see out in San Francisco. That could be Jaheim Bell, but helps him progress and develop and move along. Mo Alley Cox fills out the room. That's why I like that. The rest of the names, though, except for Jeff Wilson. That did perk my ears because you're right, the speed that it brings. Where Ramondre Stevenson's great. You know what you get with him. And also, he's towards the end of his rookie contract with the Patriots. Antonio Gibson, great RB2, good receiving back, good pass pro, but not much of a runner. Jeff Wilson adds a layer to this offense. But again, it's for how long? Is it a year? Is it 2? And what's the offense look like at that point? Outside of what you've mentioned, which I love, and I went with the Bengal wide receiver holdouts, I'm looking into the NFC And this is curious because I think it's a team that could sneak into the playoffs as it works. But what's Caleb Williams' development like in Hallis Hall and out in Chicago? Because as he's growing, and they built this whole thing to go out and draft him number 1 overall, went out and got Roma Dunze with their second top 10 pick, which many didn't expect, but I like it. Keenan Allen, 1 year left. DJ Moore towards the end of his contract. Roma Dunze, a rookie. But Caleb Williams stepping in with his development. What can you and what can you not get away with at the NFL level? Because he is as talented as they come, and his ceiling is an Aaron Rodgers or a Patrick Mahomes. But what you got away with at USC when you had to put the whole team on your back with a terrible offensive line, a mediocre receiving core at best, a very bad defense. Everything's better around him in the NFL, but what are the habits that he carries over? Because this is a guy that is going to be starting from day one. He doesn't have time to wait and develop and sit a year or even sit half a season like a Drake May has that luxury because of expectations. The Bears went all in on a rookie scale contract. That's why my attention shifts to Caleb Williams and all this, because I want him to succeed. I love what the Bears did in building up. I loved watching him in college. I know he gets a hate for all his stuff off the field with his painted nails, but if the hand that has the nails that's painted throws 40 touchdowns in a season and leads the Bears to a playoffs, no one will care. They'll love it. But that's why my attention on this, outside of New England, is on development of Caleb Williams and how he develops for the Bears going into this offseason and before he debuts week 1 as a rookie starting quarterback.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. And like you said, I'm rooting for him too. He's such a fun player to watch. I think, like you said, with development, it's a question. It could be really ugly. It could be as beautiful as his USC, highlights where we don't know, but it's a question mark. So I agree 1,000%. I think you're going to see it early though. You'll find out quick if he's all he's cracked up to be.
All right, we're going to move on to a little segment called Say What here on Foxboro Rush. We got some key quotes that came around the league. And it all starts with former, now retired Patriots running back Damian Harris on Mac Jones' time in New England. He was speaking on the Athletic Football Show, and he said, this is a short quote, "What happened to Mac Jones in New England was not because of Mac Jones." Talking about Matt Patricia and Joe Judge leading the offense in his second year in the league. The full extent of this was, what happened in New England to Mac Jones was because of the fact you took away an offensive coordinator in Josh McDaniels, who coached him to be a Pro Bowler and almost coached us to winning our division with a rookie quarterback. Then you take Matt Patricia, who's coached defense his entire life, Joe Judge, who's been a special teams coach, and then you just throw them in there and say, hey, coach this kid up. He's a first-round pick. But as long as you teach him what I say, everything is going to be fine. What I say alludes to Bill Belichick and the control he had on everything. What was your reaction to seeing Damian Harris, who spoke on this more than any other player that had that experience in that awful second year for Mac Jones, that awful offensive experience? What was your reaction to seeing Damian Harris go to an extent like this and call it out for what it was, what everyone knows, which was a failure?
I think there's a lot of truth to what Damian Harris had to say in terms of Matt Patricia was a disaster. It was a stupid decision from jump. Joe Judge, it was dumb trying to bring him in and make him do something he had never done before, just like Patricia. I also think there was a level of Bill Belichick thinking he could do the impossible, which was develop a quarterback with a bunch of guys that he just liked, not necessarily coaches that were built to do that. So I agree with him on all of that. But I think an important reminder for everybody out there, if you don't know, Damian Harris and Mac Jones are very good friends. Me and George, I love you, right? If something bad happened and people were trashing all over you and you had to do whatever, I'm going to stick up for my boy, right?
My man.
And I think everybody else out there can agree with that. But if you stink, you stink. And I think that's like, let's all be serious for a moment. Mac Jones was never going to rise above a certain level. The Patriots didn't even help him get to that level. I think there's blame plenty to go around for everybody, but I can appreciate and respect Damian Harris's desire to go to bat for his friend. He's just being a good pal is all he was really doing.
Good pals going back to their Alabama days. Yeah, I mean, going into year 3, Mac Jones was what he was, right? In the final year when you bring in Bill O'Brien. And again, Bill Belichick doesn't give Bill O'Brien a full free reign and full say on his offensive staff. But these are the reports that came out. I mean, Jacoby Myers came out and said, we didn't know what we were doing. We're really confused. Everything's behind. Yeah. Guess what? Was told to F off, walk, and was great for the Las Vegas Raiders. Brian Hoyer was told to eat it after he was a guy that behind the scenes validated Mac Jones' feelings of being screwed over by the staff. Right. And that's what you get. Matt Patricia never did it before. Joe Judge neither. Bill Belichick with the defensive mind that he was. The three of them are leading this offense. And they even took plays that Josh McDaniels ran and completely changed the wordage and verbiage of the play calling. So even what Mac Jones knew, they switch it up on him. This is the quote that got me, is that Damon Harris said this too. If anyone had anything to say about it, it was met with a very, very quick and swift, shut the F up, I know what I'm doing. Again, that's coming from Bill Belichick. And that's what he was doing. There's ego, there's bravado, whatever happened to it. They ruined Mac Jones. Now, would he have been anything special? Would he be anything close to what Drake May could be one day? No, not at all. But he was a Pro Bowl replacement quarterback. And if you put everything right around him, look at a Brock Purdy, but more athletic is Brock Purdy. But look at him. That's what you could have had, but you never had the system in place. And Josh McDaniels bolting to go be the Raiders head coach is what started all of this, and look how long he lasted there. All right, next up, Ryan Kelly, NFLPA Vice President of Executive Committee on an 18-game schedule. Until you're the one that's going out there and putting the helmet on for 18 of those games, then come talk to me. How long do you think until the NFL, the fact they're even talking about this, how long do you think until the NFL has an 18-game schedule? Now, given the current CBA runs until 2030, so 2031 is literally the earliest we can see it. But do you think it happens then even?
I think just like many of the things that have come up in the past few years, we're going to see it as soon as it's allowed. Because I think the NFL gave in a little bit more than the Players Association did for the last CBA. They've moved around a little bit of the offseason stuff. They've made it a little bit easier. And that's a whole different conversation for another day. But it's the PA's turn to give in. And this is a huge ask. And I agree with Ryan Kelly. It's maybe the dumbest thing they can do in terms of player safety. You know, there's a quote out there from LaDainian Tomlinson. It's back, when he was playing. He said, I wake up every Monday morning and I feel like I got into a major car collision. That's what playing in the NFL is like. Mm-hmm. If 16 wasn't enough, they needed to make sure it was 17, and now 17 is not enough. And it's all for some extra money for a bunch of billionaires. It's such a ridiculous idea. You know what I mean? Like, if you spell it out to anybody who doesn't really watch sports, if you just explain it, they'll be like, what? Why? Mm-hmm. That's so stupid. And we can all see that it's stupid. But the guys with the deep pockets, they're going to get what they want. And like you said, it's ready to go in 2030, and I think that's as soon as you're going to see it, is right when the new CBA is agreed to.
Yeah, one of my favorite running back quotes, too, and Arian Foster, favorite running back I grew up watching outside of LT. He also said Tuesdays were Toradol Tuesdays because the amount of Toradol they would take after a Sunday game or a Monday game where it's still in your system, so Monday you're okay. Players, NFL players on Tuesday, which is the mandated day off during the week for most teams, unless you're playing on Thursday night now, some of them can't get out of bed because the Toradol wears off. All the pain comes in, and they can barely walk. Again, to LT's point, feeling like they were put in a car accident. The way I see this going down, like you said, the NFLPA is going to have some give on their side, upping the minimum salary. They would have to add in another bye week. Maybe have a mid-week season break as well, where it's like an all-star week, like what the NHL, NBA, and Major League Baseball has. Instead of putting the Pro Bowl at the end of the season, make it flag only, but have there be a break built into the middle of the season. And then on top of this, though, 18 games in, that would now be 20 or 21 weeks with 2 byes and an all-star break mixed in. Then when do you kick off? Is it starting in Labor Day weekend? Okay, so it's a shorter offseason and shorter ramp-up period. Do you still have 2 preseason games? Because all these rookies and guys that are bouncing around the league and journeymen, they need to prove and have tape to make a roster spot. Or do you link up with a league like the XFL where this will be our development program, then we get guys from that and eliminate the preseason? So much will have to come together on both sides. It sucks, but it's going to happen in 2031. And Keegan, you said it, because at the end of the day, it is money. The next game they get, and they can sell that to Peacock, to Amazon Prime, to Apple TV by then, who knows, to whatever, Netflix now. And an NFL owner goes, oh, that's another $5-10 million I'll have in my bank account just because my athletes that I'm already paying millions have to play one more game. Yeah, sign me up for it. That's going to be reaction from the billionaires. There's going to have to be some give. Maybe they pay them a little more, but to them, to the owners, it'll be worth it when they can sell one game for $90 million, especially depending on what the stakes are. All right, finally, Stefon Diggs, now in Houston. On being in Houston with CJ Stroud, I've been in the league for a little while now, so being around a good group of guys is always a breath of fresh air. Have your opinion on being in Buffalo and playing there. I don't think there's anyone that's a bigger breath of fresh air than Josh Allen. I'm talking as a person, as a fun-loving guy, as a personality is. But Stefon Diggs saying this, being around a good group of guys is always a breath of fresh air. Interesting if that's a dig at Josh Allen or for him just being in a new setting. But what do you expect from Stefon Diggs, who's now in a cluttered wide receiver room with Tank Dell, Nico Collins, also, and Dalton Schultz in that system as well?
He's going to have to swallow his pride a little bit, I think, if Houston really wants to be successful. And, I'm not going to come out and say that he's incapable of doing that. We've seen plenty of that over the years. You know what I mean? Like, guys who were the number one guy in a certain place, they move on and they're able to decide, like, I want to do something that's going to help this team. So he's not going to reach the same plateaus that he has in the last few seasons in terms of numbers. I think he's going to be way below that. How is he going to respond is my question. Because he notoriously, when he doesn't get the ball, he'll throw a fit. He'll scream at his quarterback. He'll yell at his offensive coordinator. And watching Stefon Diggs, the football player, might be one of my favorite things to do because he is so creative and he's so damn good. And he's done it above what anybody ever expected of him. So I have a lot of respect for him as a player. I think the personality stuff is like, he just needs to get out of his own way. And stuff like this, like you said, Josh Allen is just... seems like the coolest dude, and throwing a little dig at him just because you got out of there it's just ridiculous. I think it's so there's no reason for it, and he's just doing it because it's how he's always operated. We'll see how it goes in Houston. I think CJ Stroud, personality wise, is so laid back that it might not matter, but it could blow up in his face. It could blow up in Houston's face. It can. They can win a Super Bowl, they could lose in the first round of the playoffs, and he could demand a trade. I think it could go both ways.
Well, it is him on a prove-it deal. They gave him a one-year deal, so maybe he'll be humble. He'll come in, do his job, then hope he gets paid on the other end. Him being with C.J. Stroud, which is another top 7 caliber quarterback. Josh Allen's second best in the NFL, in my opinion. But C.J. Stroud has shown in his rookie year he has a talent and in a great receiving room, and with an offensive coordinator in Bobby Slowick, which is an upgrade from Joe Brady. Stefon Diggs will eat. But will he be that 100-catch, 1,200-yard guy? I don't think so, but that's because of all the mouths to feed in this offense. But if he's winning, he'll be okay. And remember, Stefon Diggs ran his way out of Minnesota just like he did out of Buffalo. Hey, make sure to check out the latest episode of Boston Has Entered the Chat, wherever you get your podcast, hosted by Travis Thomas and myself. We recap the latest Game 2 of the NBA Finals, and we go everywhere across sports, talking Caitlin Clark and her being snubbed off the USA Women's Olympic team as well. That's Boston Has Entered the Chat, dropping 5 days a week. Wherever you get your podcast, please like, subscribe, and review. All right, Keegan, so hearing CJ Stroud talk about, Stefon Diggs talk about CJ Stroud like that, hearing him have his comments, being around a great group of guys, breath of fresh air, had me thinking, if you had to go with your top 3 quarterback wide receiver duos, because you could say Stroud and Diggs are one of the best in the NFL, but if you had to go with your top 3 quarterback wide receiver duos, who would you go with?
You want all 3 or you just want the first one?
Give me all 3. Let's hear it.
All right, 1, 2, 3 in that order. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, I think without question, personally. Joe Burrow, I think I might be higher on than most people, which is crazy because everybody loves Joe Burrow. You know what I mean? People don't really have a bad thing to say about him, but I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I think Jamar Chase is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Number 2, Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, and I think we'll have a conversation about it, but this is as much to do with CeeDee Lamb as it is, anything. He is so dynamic, and he is such a huge part of that offense. I think you could throw 7 or 8 quarterbacks in there that I would pick and maybe elevate him more than Dak Prescott. So that's a lot to do with CeeDee Lamb. And then 3, I got Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. I think last year with the debacle that offense was, it was ugly. And I don't think people are talking about it a ton outside of Philadelphia. They're installing a new offense, so we'll see how that goes. But just off of what we've seen them do, that Super Bowl year, they were as good as anybody. And Jalen Hurts maybe finding a system that he's better suited for than the one that they were in last year. I think this can be a special, special duo.
Yeah, I think of A.J. Brown. That's a top 3, top 5 receiver, and then Jalen Hurts in a good system. But it's going to be a test. Three last years, 3 different offensive coordinators, 3 different offenses that'll be ran over in Philly. So actually, number 1, I have Dak and CeeDee Lamb. But you were on the same premise. CeeDee Lamb is doing so much heavy lifting here for them. But his last 2 seasons, 107 catches, almost 1,400 yards. But last year, 179 targets because he's the only receiver on that team, only offensive weapon. Remember, no run game was left. 135 catches, almost 1,800 yards, 12 touchdowns. You said dynamic, one of the best route runners in the NFL. He's a top 3 guy when it comes to that and getting separation and getting open. And he's constantly been one of the best wide receivers I have them as the top duo, and it's all because of CeeDee Lamb and the heavy lifting he does. I would go Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins here if Kirk Cousins was still in Minnesota, but I don't trust J.J. McCarthy. Then two like you, I have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is, again, a top 3 wide receiver. Joe Burrow is a top 3 quarterback. So really, yeah, right, maybe I should have them as number 1. But again, I think it speaks on the respect I have for CeeDee Lamb. And when Jamar Chase goes down, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd steps up, and Joe Burrow still does his thing. But Joe Burrow is the best quarterback on my list. And then Jamar Chase, of course, 1,400 yards, 1,046 yards, 1,200 yards. That's what he's done. And now we'll see them with a different offensive coordinator. And finally, Tua Tagovailoa and Tyreek Hill. And it's really Tyreek Hill and Mike McDaniels doing all the heavy lifting in this pairing. Right. But look at what Tua has done. Almost 120 catches, 1,700 plus yards the last 2 seasons. He had a bad ankle last year and still played almost every game. And if it wasn't for Justin Jefferson, he'd be the best wide receiver in the game. Tua doesn't, there's a bunch of guys I'd pick over him, like your argument for Dak Prescott. But whatever, he runs his system the right way. He knows where to put the ball because he knows where Tyreek Hill is going to be at a certain point in a certain time in this system and gets it to him. So I would take him over that. But that's why I have that top 3. And really, you see a lot of heavy lifting outside of Burrow and Chase. To me, it's all about the wide receivers in this combo. I wanted to put Patrick Mahomes in this, but his wide receiver room's terrible. Josh Allen, great. His wide receiver room sucks. The one I could think of is maybe you go Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua. Maybe you go Brock Purdy and Brandon Ayuk, Caleb Williams, Keenan Allen, right? Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson, but we haven't seen that. And again, like I said, I want to throw Justin Jefferson in here, but I don't trust J.J. McCarthy at all.
I almost snuck in Nacua and Matt Stafford. I wouldn't hate it. Matthew Stafford, maybe this is something that's going to get me a bunch of hate, but Matthew Stafford's a Hall of Fame quarterback.
He is.
That guy is unbelievable. And I think Puka Nacua, just off what we've seen in his rookie year, sky's the limit for him. And one sneaky one, I don't think yet, but what we can see in the future, Jordan Love and Christian Watson, they've got the capability.
Yes.
I'll say. They're not there yet, but if Christian Watson can stay healthy and Jordan Love can build off of last year, 1,000%, I could see them at number 2, if not just in the top 3.
Oh, I'm all over Jordan Love. I mean, this is about to be his 5th year being in Matt LaFleur's system, his 2nd year as a starter. Yep. And this was the thing. My list, I started with, give me the quarterbacks, right? But then you realized how bad some of these wide receiver rooms are. Now, you could go C.J. Stroud and Stefon Diggs, but is Diggs his guy? It's Nico Collins and Tank Dell. With Jordan Love, Christian Watson hasn't been healthy, and even when he's in, Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, those guys have been more reliable than him. Then even think about if you want to go like Amon-Ra St. Brown, but like Jared Goff, he's okay. I think he's the 3rd best quarterback in his division. I put Jordan Love as number 1. But I like sneaking in that Jordan Love. I wanted to do the same thing. Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson's what I really wanted because Garrett Wilson's one of the best receivers in the league. But again, we haven't seen it. And what we've seen, at least from my top 3, is that the Dak CD one is just so interesting because we're both in agreement on this. Like, if you go, all right, what about Jordan Love instead of Dak? I would go, man, I'm banking on a lot. But I know what Dak is. And that's not what I want, especially when you're paying him. Give me Jordan Love and CeeDee Lamb. I would take that combo over, and that's a better duo to me than Dak and CD. But it shows how good CeeDee Lamb is. Wearing 88 for the Cowboys, being a top 3 wide receiver in this league, and that he lifts up and carries Dak Prescott so much. Again, another offense that has a huge changeover in play calling and offensive coordinator as well.
Yeah, a lot of one-sided relationships in the NFL. You'll see, somebody's carrying somebody else's water. But I agree with that. There's a lot of great duos. It's just, where can you find the balance, right, between the quarterback and the receiver?
And I love the balance the Packers found. And even if you think about it, look at who's won the last 2 Super Bowls. It's been the Chiefs, who have the best quarterback. Because if you go, I need you to win a playoff game, give me the Chiefs offense. I don't care who's a receiver. Because Mahomes has done it with Hardman and Kadarius Toney and Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Travis Kelce on his back 9. Give me Mahomes if you need a win. We're talking wide receiver quarterback duos. Give me Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. As crazy as that sounds, I'll take them number 1 over anyone, all thanks to CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, I got Burrow and Chase, but I agree with you 1,000%. A wide receiver can do a lot for his quarterback, and I think that's something that doesn't get talked about enough in terms of you got that guy. He can elevate a quarterback just as much as a quarterback can elevate his group.
Yep, and he look at Tyreek Hill in Miami, and a single dynamic wide receiver 1 can elevate an entire system. That's why the Patriots need to go out and get a T. Higgins. All right, that's it for this episode of Foxboro Rush from George Blekshay and Keegan Stifle. Keegan, appreciate you so much for making the time. Coming in from the beautiful Naples, Maine. I didn't know that existed. I was thinking Florida and Italy first, but Naples, Maine. Way to put them on the map, my man.
Yeah, I didn't know it existed either, but I'm glad I'm here. Who knew they had Wi-Fi out in Maine? But apparently they do.
Don't tell TC about that one. All right. That's Keegan Stifle. Thanks so much for joining us, man. Appreciate you taking the time. This is the latest episode of Foxboro Rush. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow, rate, review as well, wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon as well. That's it for Foxboro Rush. We'll see you guys same time, same place next time.